Hi there, this is Dr. Unbuddy to talk a little bit about Project 6, give you a couple ideas about it. First thing to appreciate is what this project is about. And one thing that's important with any type of problem solving is to determine what's familiar. You want to find something small in here that you're familiar with and you can start with. One thing I read said that every hard problem has an easier problem hidden in there trying to get out. And so you want to look at these and say, okay, so what is it that I know how to do that I can start doing that? And I'm going to try and show you that today. What this project is really about is we've got a file, it's got a different format, and we're going to read that file. We're going to extract some information out of it, and then we're going to do something with it. In this case, we're dealing with files of genetic information. And you don't have to know anything about genetics to do this problem. We're going to extract some data, pull out lists of things. And what you want to think about here, because lists is what this project is about, is that we're going to read the file and create a list. And then we're going to use that list to pass it in and out of functions and things like that. And in some cases create some more lists. But that's what this is about. Read a file, create a list, and then we're going to do something with that list. So think about it in those terms. We've done 2 labs of lists. And so from this point on, we want to think about, read a file, create some lists, and let's do something with it. So let's take a look at this project. What we have going on here is we have some data files, and we have a small one and a full one. And we're going to start out with a small one. It just has a few lines to it, not a big deal. That way you can look at the entire file quite easily. We have an open file function, and hey, guess what? It does the same thing our other open file functions can do, so use the one that you have. Our read file is different because it's particular to this chromosome file, and so we'll take a look at, but pretty much what it does is it goes through the file, grabs a couple of columns. Oh, guess what we're going to do? We're going to split to get the columns and split things into lists. Then we're going to create a tuple in there, and then we're going to append each tuple to a list. And finally, we sort the list. And the reason we sort the list is that in terms of testing, that now gives us a way so everybody has the same list, and then we can actually test it on mirror. The sorting doesn't play any other role than that. So once we have a list, I'll call it a genes list, then what we can do is we can pass it to this extract chromosome function with a particular chromosome, and that will now again, that will return a list of that particular chromosome. And we're going to sort, again, sorting just so that we have something canonical there. Notice, and I'll talk about this more, that we read the file, that's going to return a genes list, and we're going to take that genes list and pass it in here, and out of that we're going to pick some particular chromosome, like maybe the one CHRV as a particular one, and then that will again return another list, and we'll sort it for testing purposes. We'll take that same genes list and send it to this function, and we're going to do what we're going to do here is now call the previous function. All right. So now once we have this function b here, in this function extract genomes, we're going to call that function. Right, so these are tying together. You want to do these in order. Do the A, the B, the C, and so on. Right. And then we're going to get out of that a list of, we're going to get these Chrome gene lists, right? And then for each of those, we're going to compute a length, and in this case, we're going to return a tuple that is the mean and the standard deviation, and we give you a formula here, and basically what we do is we tell you how to solve that, what this formula means. And then finally, there is the displaying of a particular chromosome. Right, that displays one, so we'll keep calling that. That's the basic idea. Read a file, execute some functions. And what I'm going to do now is take you through the various tests here and give you an idea as to how you build this. So what I did in preparation is I grabbed the skeleton file, just so you can see the different functions that we're dealing with here. And I actually ran my program and then quit immediately, just so that loaded all the functions in there. So now I can do something like, and this would be what you would do in your main program, is I can open the file, call my open file function. That's this function. All right. I can call that, and that prompts for a file name. Let me get the file name right. We're working with a small one. Now I've opened the file. And in my read file, okay, I got a file. Let's see what's in it. Standard old thing, and I always start here. That means I know that I've got everything set, and there's the junk that we see in the file. All right, let me close the file, and let me reopen it again for reading. There we go. We'll open the file. It asks for a file name. I give them. We're working off the small one here, and now, this time, instead of printing the whole line, let's split it into a list. I'll call it my line list, and we'll split this. I'll strip off the carriage return first. I don't really need to do that, but let me do that. And if we look at the, I'm not going to print the whole line list, because if we look at the description here of my read function, we see that we grab something out of column 0, out of column 3, out of column 4. So just as a starting point here, let's slice off the first 4 here and see what it looks like. So here's a look at my data file. That's nice. And oops, here we go here. And what do we have here? We have some chromosomes here. Don't need that column. Don't need that column. And then we have a start. And we have an end. So we actually want these 3 pieces of information: the chromosome, the start, and the end. You make them into a tuple, append them onto a list, and that's what you're going to return from this function. So we'll read through, we'll grab those values, put them into a tuple, and then return this list. We can see that here. I input the file, that we input the small one, and what do I return? I return a list. There's the beginning of the list, there's the end of the list, and it has tuples with the chromosome, the start, and the end. There's the end of a tuple. Here's the next one. So we just create those tuples, append them onto my list, and then we return that list. So let's take a look at how that might work. So we need to restart this process here, close my file, reopen it. Ask for the file name. And now this time I'm going to read my file. And we know it's going to return a genes list. So I have, notice how I'm working my way through these. I started with open file. There it is. We opened the file. Now we're going to do read file. There it is. Read the file. And so I read the file. I put it into the genes list. What does that look like? Oh, look at that. It's a bunch of, it's exactly what we're looking for. It's a bunch of tuples. All right, so here's, so there's my list. And within that, there's a tuple with the parentheses. All right, and I get all of them, noticing we have, because I've sorted it, we have these different, there's chromosome I, chromosome I, chromosome I, V, or IV, chromosome V, chromosome X. Right? Actually, those are Roman numerals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 10. So now I've tested the first two functions. Let's now move on and test the next one. And what does that do? So let's take this. And it takes a genes list and a particular chromosome. So let's grab one. And let's make it equal to something. I'll call it my chrome gene list. And let's run that function and see what we end up with. And what we did here is we took the genes list and a particular gene, that's that, and we made a new list just with those in it. Okay, so we didn't do very much. Right? Each one of these functions is just a little bit more, just operating on a little bit more of what we're dealing with here. So it's a small step, and I could have passed any one of these, CHRVI or II and so on, and extracted out. Notice I get the same values that I have here. All right. Okay. So we took care of that function. Now let's try the next function. All right, and that also takes a genes list. And this will extract out all of the genome a list. And what do we have here? That looks a little hard to read, so let's just we can see if we can print this out a little nicer. And what we see is I have a list of lists is what this really is, and we tried to print it out here, so let's take a look at that. So there's a list, and within that we have some other lists. Let's oops. There we go. So there's inside of that is a list here and here. And notice how these are all the CHRIs. And the next list, starting there and there, is the CHRIIs, okay, and so on. All right, we have a bunch of these lists for each one of those. All right. And what I did next then is I just printed those out and showed what the individual lists are. So there's a list there, there's a list there. That's this first one. Actually, why don't I go like this? So this list, in terms of printing out, I just printed it out one at a time there. And you can see that those guys are exactly the same. So that's now showing what the extract genome did. All right, remember we got that out of the extract genome. Okay, what's our next thing? Okay, compute the gene length. All right, let's do that next. And it takes a Chrome gene list. Just to review, let's see if we got one of those. I think we did. That's what it looks like. So that's the input. So if I take that function and then I pass it this list or some list, it returns two values which are the median and standard deviation for that that gene. And now there is a display data, which is the last one. That just formats things nicely. So if I do the display data and I pass it a genes list and a particular chromosome, it just displays it just displays the particular values for that chromosome, you know, the mean and standard deviation of that, and I you know, we give you the value there to test it with. Okay. Hopefully what that does is that gives you an idea of how each of those functions works, and then in the main what you do, sorry, scrolling the wrong way there, is, for example, in test case 1 we input a file name, and again we're giving it the small one. And we say, all right, enter a chromosome, CHRI, and we will print out its mean and standard deviation. All right, let's look at another one. this chromosome 4, CHRIV, does the same thing, and chromosome X, just 3 different values just to test things out, and then we quit that. Test 2 does a little error correcting about file opening. Hopefully you have that, that all working. We still are reading the small file. Oh, a little more error correcting there. Notice, and then here we're using capitals, so it's Roman numeral like, and it shouldn't care about that. You know, all the upper and lowercase. So first of all, we had a typo there, and then we grabbed the whole thing, and then we do all here. And again, it's got to be able to handle upper and lowercase. You guys ought to be able to handle that now. Same thing with quit. This, notice here, this goes through all of them. So you basically loop through all of them. Just keep calling what you had done previously. And finally, the test case 3 does the large file. This will actually run for a little while because it is actually a big file. And we test all of it, quit it, and of course we have a blind test. The blind test, by the way, uses yet another file. So it's not the same as this file or the other file. That's to make sure that you haven't done anything that is specific for the file. Hopefully that gives you some ideas. Good luck.